All right, I am so happy with this photo. Sometimes I talk about how I'll take a photo that's just, oh, it's not that great. And I think 2 weeks ago, I had a picture of a yellow cypress bush that it just didn't turn out how I wanted it. This photo turned out exactly how I wanted, and I'm so happy with this. My wife has an orchid that she's had for, I don't know, a year and a half probably. And these flowers are just beautiful on this orchid, and they stick around for a long time. But I don't know how to photograph this. It's really tricky. It's a lot more difficult than I imagined. And I've tried a couple times over the years. And if you go to the blog, I've linked to two instances where I have tried to photograph this orchid. I've used, once was a silhouette where I put a bunch of lights outside of the room where this orchid is and tried to make the plant a silhouette, and it was okay. It worked, but it wasn't the greatest. And then another one, it was a close-up where I did a lot of artificial lighting, and I think I went overboard on the color of the lighting. It didn't work. Something about it just wasn't happening. But this time, everything just worked, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. Now, the room that I shot this in was totally dark. It was at night. There was a giant frosted window behind this flower. And I waited until the light was such that I could control everything. And on the left, I set up 3 nanlite pavo tubes on a triangle frame, not pointed at the flower though. They were pointed at the frosted glass behind it. And that's why the left-hand side kind of glows orange/reddish. On the right is another nanlite pavo tube set to blue or purple, and then pointed not at the flower, but at the glass, at the frosted glass. And so that had the effect of creating this rich gradient in the background, changing from kind of the classic contrasty colors of orange and teal. I mean, it's not exactly, it's like reddish to purplish, but that color scheme, that contrasting color scheme was not only very contrasty, but it was designed to make the viewer think of the transition from night to day, or day to night, you might say. Almost like the sun is rising on the left, and on the right is still night just hanging in there. Or you could think of it the other way, like maybe it's a sunset. And in the front, I've got a light that I'm just waving around in my hand. So I used a 10-second shutter timer on this. So I composed the shot and then clicked the shutter button, and I had 10 seconds to move my lights around in my hands to light the rest of the scene how I wanted to. And I took the light in my left hand, which was just set to normal white light, 2700 Kelvin, and I positioned that in several different spots and ended up with the lighting that you see here. And I tried like on the left, on the right, farther back, closer. And the reason I like this is it's got a little bit of shadow where you can see on the left, the leaf curls a little bit. And so you have that shadow, and that adds a sense of dimensionality to the flower that was missing in others. And then there's another one on my right hand. So there's 4 separate light sources here. The one on my right hand was set to kind of this a similar bluish, purplish color as the background. And that's where the light on the edge of the flower comes in. So you've got this rim lighting on the right hand side of the white flower petals. They have this little, almost like a purplish sparkle to it. That's coming from my right hand. The shadow on the left, plus the edge of the flower petals, that's kind of bright white. It's this very, very thin band of bright white. That's coming from my right hand. I used my macro lens, even though this isn't a super close-up macro shot, but I used my macro lens, f8, 1/15 second of a shutter, ISO 100, because it was all controlled environment and there was no movement, so I could have a low shutter speed and a slow shutter speed and low ISO. And everything just worked. I even like the subtle bits of translucency. If you look at the top petal, you can see just barely a little bit of green poking through, and that's because there's a green bud behind it, and the light from behind it is just barely translucent, or making the flower petal just barely translucent. I'm just so happy with how this photo turned out. And it's a direct result of me learning to do this type of photo better and better over time. If you try to take a photo and you look at it later and it's just not working, don't think of it as a failure. Think of it as a growing opportunity so that you can learn from it and improve it for next time.